Day Shalom, it's your brother Thon. All right, first and foremost, I want to give all praises to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah HaKodash. I want to give double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. I want to say Shalom to all the brothers and, of course, a few sisters pursuing this truth and sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your house. Now, we got a question about Genesis 5. And if any of the people that were being listed as the holy lineage was being traced in that time, if any of the people being listed died in the flood, pretty much in the great judgment. No, is the short answer. um 8 died before the flood. It mentions 8 dying before the flood, and that's pretty much it. Okay. um Enoch, of course, was taken up into a chariot because the Lord didn't want him corrupted by the great evil that was being forwarded during that time. All right, it was all kind of degenerate behavior and idol worship going on, so the Lord took him out of the way. The same way the elect in our time is going to be taken up out of the way. Right? Like it talks about in Matthew, the 16th chapter. There be some of you standing here that shall not taste of death until they see the Son of Man coming in the kingdom. How does that go? Let me go find it really quick, guys. It's in Matthew, the 16th chapter. I don't want to misquote it. All right, so this is Matthew 16:28. It says, verily I say unto you, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Boom, that's what it says. All right. All right, so I'm just gonna read off the some of the how long it was later, how far it was out from each of these men's death, the flood itself. Okay. Adam, the flood happened 726 years after he died. For Seth, the flood happened 614 years after he died. For Enos, the flood happened 516 years after he died. For Canaan, Canaan happened 421 years after he died. For Mahalalel, uh 366 years after he died. For Jared, it happened 234 years after he died. And for Lamech, the flood happened 5 years later. Now, Methuselah died this just shortly before the flood, the same year of the flood, but shortly before it took place. Methuselah did, which is fire, because you got to realize, like, Noah got like direct stories of what happened with the fall of Adam because they were living so long. Now, when you go to the next chapter in Genesis 6, it tells you in the third verse that the Lord shortened the lifespan of men. All right. All right. The punishment for sin would take place faster. All right. But yeah, Noah was getting like firsthand accounts of what was going down in the beginning. You know what I mean? So there's like, when you go through like all the history, because Noah had his 3 sons on the boat. When they got off the boat, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. A lot of different cultures, they'll have similar ways of doing things because they all had the same forefather. Because a lot of people's argument will be like, "Oh, the scripture is just a variation of everybody had those kind of customs of keeping things." Yeah, duh. That's more proof, actually, of what went down. Because every nation, every ethnicity of people on the earth have a flood story, right? And they all have similar ways about them because they all had the same forefather, Noah. Now, Shem is the one that the covenant, the contract, the relationship with the Lord is tracked through him. It continued on through him. Now, the other nations, they went on to make up their own gods and do other bullshit. But through Shem was the holy customs. The covenant continued. Okay, and you get all the way down to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right. But, I want to mention this too. Those people in Genesis 5, again, is tracking the sons of God. Before we were called the Israelites, before the flood, before those same spirits, all right, that have the covenant today, that the Lord is dealing with them today, Before we were called Israelites before the flood, the scriptures called us the sons of God. Okay? The sons of God were pretty much the royal family in the earth. We're the ones that knew, the standard the Lord wanted to be kept in the earth. So these were men of very, very high status. And they were referred to as giants in the scriptures, men of renown. Let's actually go to Genesis 6 and just cover a little bit of that briefly. All right? Bear with me while I pull it up. So in Genesis 6, and I'll just start at the top. So I want to break a few things down really quick that get misconstrued in the world. All right, Genesis 6 and 1. It says, "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God," okay, the Elohim, the Elohim, a third of them were put in flesh. So in the scriptures, it talks about the chains of darkness. Let me get that really quick. Let's go all the way. You have the Elohim, if you know about Genesis 1 and that breakdown. You had the elect spirits who played a hand in, helping Yahweh Shah create the earth. A third of them were cast down into the chains of darkness, meaning the flesh. Let's go to 2 Peter 2 and 4. It says, "For if God spared not the angels that sinned, the messengers," all right, angel can simply mean messenger, okay? "The elect men here on the earth preaching the word and walking uprightly to the best of their ability." All right, they're co-workers with the angels in the heavens. And this was even told to John the Revelator, Revelation 19 and 10, when he fell down to worship the angel, and he said, "Do see thou do it not, for we are fellow servants." You're just in the chains of darkness, but we hold the same occupation. That's what he was telling them. I'll get that after this, actually. 2 Peter 2 and 4, it says, "For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell," a living condition here on the earth, "and delivered them into chains of darkness," in the chains of darkness, because we're able to sin. When you're in that spiritual state, you're not able to sin. Angels don't sin. They're not disobedient. But these spirits were cast down into the flesh. All right. And they were put in this condition to where they were subject to vanity. They were able to sin. All right. I'm a part of that number. All right. But cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment. Okay. Now, since I mentioned Revelation 19, just to prove my little point here. Is the point little? All right, and that's Revelation 19 and 10. John the Revelator is encountering an angel. It says, "And I fell at his feet to worship him. And he said unto me, See thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Yahweh Shai. Worship Yahweh, for the testimony of Yahweh Shai is the spirit of prophecy." He told John the Revelator that they're fellow servants. Why is that? Well, we just explained it. Now let's go back to Genesis 6. And we'll start at the top here at verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God," the Elohim, right, the men that were cast into the chains of darkness, "saw the daughters of men," because there were three classifications of men before the flood. You had the sons of God, right, who would be the Israelites today. You had the sons of the wicked, which were the lineage of Cain, which would be the Edomites today. Then you had the sons of men, which were all of the other nations. Okay. So the sons of God were dealing with these women from these heathen nations. And guess what they did? They would take on the customs of these heathen nations, which was kin to what? Idolatry, worshiping their gods, their customs. And because they did that, we fell from grace. So when you look up this word for giants in a second, as we continue to read down, it's going to call them the Nephilim. And that's what you hear about in the world. Oh, the Nephilim, the fallen angels. Yeah, these men that had this great status, that had this close, intimate relationship with the Lord, began to fall into idol worship because of the women that they were choosing to deal with. And then the kids would go into idol worship. And then it just trickled down to generation after generation after generation. And our nation was infected with these wayward ways that didn't align with the Lord's standard. You understand? That's what's going on here in Genesis. The same thing that happened even after the flood with our people. Okay, going back to Solomon. Solomon made the same mistake Adam did, but he got it right as Yahweh Shai. All right. Yeah. Genesis 6:2. The sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives, all which they chose. Of all which they chose. Verse 3. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. Verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days. And again, when you look up the word giants here, it's going to be H5303, Napa all. All right. That's, it says giants, the Nephilim. Then you go to the root word H5307. It's going to elaborate on what Nephilim means. And it says to fall, to lie down, to be cast down, to fail, fall of a violent death. All right. We fell from grace because of our disobedience, which is, again, it's a recurring theme with our people. That's why we're under the curses now. So back to Genesis 6:4. It says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So the sons of God were looked at as men of great status, men of renown. All right. So the giants thing there is figurative, okay, meaning to fall. It says the same became mighty men. The heathen, the children that the sons of God had with these heathen women, they were still of the line of Adam, Adamites, right? And were therefore they still were mighty men, all right, mighty in knowledge, mighty in strength, all that. But they were tainted by these idolatrous practices. Okay. So many of the sons of God, yeah, they did die. But I'm sure there were sons of God that did die in a flood. But the men that were mentioned in Genesis 5, nah, they didn't. All right. So yeah, I hope that answers the question that I was asked. And hopefully there was some other information in there that was edifying. But you notice that the Lord always takes up his elect, those who are walking after him in an upright fashion, you know, they're always going to be taken out of the way of the great destruction. Let's go to First Maccabees 2:61. Bear with me real quick. First Maccabees 2:61. It says, and thus consider ye throughout all ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Anybody that leaned on the Lord, anybody that was obedient to him, making thy prayer before his face and seeking to offend less, they never were overcome. All right, verse 62. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned into his dust, and his thought is come to nothing. And that's what's going to happen to Esau in this time. Isaiah 47:1. Sit in the dust, there is no throne. You see? The elect are always delivered from the calamity. Let's go to got two more precepts that came to mind. Romans 11:7. What then? Israel have not obtained that which he seeketh for, the bulk of the nation. But the election, the elect of the nation of Israel, hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. So the elect of the nation of Israel, they're always going to be taken care of by the husband. Okay? Even when you talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, Adam and his two daughters represented the elect in that time. They were delivered from the great destruction of those 5 cities. We seek to be the elect of our time, to be delivered out of Babylon the Great and the various places of the earth that are going to be annihilated. Okay? So, Abaratazah, the lesson was edifying. I want to give all praises once more to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakah, Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and shalom to all the brothers, and of course, the few sisters pursuing this truth in sincerity. All right, may the blessing of election be upon your house. Shalom.